the world will call you cold, detached, even broken. When you start preferring books to parties, deep conversations to small talk, solitude to crowded rooms, they'll diagnose you with some modern malaise, social anxiety, depression, arrogance. But what if the truth is far more dangerous? What if the most intelligent minds throughout history weren't rejecting humanity, but seeing through it? Arthur Schopenhauer, philosophy's most unflinching truth-teller, ripped away the veil on society's dirty secret, that most human interaction is theater, a carefully staged performance where we trade authenticity for acceptance, depth for belonging, truth for comfort. The intelligent don't hate people. They simply refuse to play pretend. Like a child who's seen behind the curtain at a magic show, they can't unsee the mechanisms of social validation that keep others spellbound. This isn't elitism, it's evolution. Just as eagles don't fly in flocks and lions don't hunt in packs, the intellectually awakened operate differently. Their minds demand substance where others settle for stimulation. They crave ideas where others seek approval. While the masses drown out their inner voices with noise, the intelligent amplify theirs through silence. But here's the revolutionary truth Schopenhauer uncovered. This apparent antisocial tendency isn't a flaw. It's the mind's natural immune response to intellectual malnutrition. When you've tasted the rich wine of profound thought, the cheap beer of casual conversation loses its appeal. When you've danced with genius in the quiet hours of the night, the clumsy shuffle of social pleasantries feels like a waste of your soul. At the heart of Schopenhauer's insight lies a piercing observation. Society is not designed for thinkers, but for survival. The rituals of small talk, the unspoken rules of conformity, the relentless pursuit of status. These are not markers of depth, but evolutionary holdovers, vestiges of a time when fitting in meant literal survival. The intelligent mind, however, operates on a different frequency. It questions where others accept, reflects where others react, and seeks meaning where others seek distraction. This divergence is not accidental but inevitable, a natural consequence of seeing what remains invisible to most. One of the most unsettling truths Schopenhauer exposed is that much of social life is a carefully maintained illusion. A collective agreement to pretend that trivialities matter. The laughter at predictable jokes, the feigned interest in mundane details, the performance of personalities tailored for approval. All of it forms what he called the masquerade of society. The intelligent see through this masquerade not because they are cynical, but because their minds refuse to suspend disbelief. Once you recognize the script, you can no longer deliver your lines with conviction. This is why solitude becomes not just preferable but necessary. It is the only space where the mind is free from the exhausting labor of pretending. Yet there is another, more profound layer to this retreat. The intelligent don't merely withdraw from society. They migrate inward, toward a richer landscape of thought. For them, a conversation with a long-dead philosopher through the pages of a book can be more electrifying than an evening of forced camaraderie. An hour of undisturbed reflection can yield more clarity than a year of casual socializing. This is not antisocial behavior but a recalibration of priorities, a recognition that most external interactions are echoes, while the voice within is the original sound. The tragedy, as Schopenhauer saw it, is that society mistakes this inward turn for disconnection, when in truth, it is the deepest form of connection, to reality, to truth, the raw pulse of existence. The thinker's solitude is not empty. It is crowded with ideas, alive with discoveries, vibrating with the kind of conversations that rarely happen in drawing rooms or dinner parties. The price of this richness, however, is the loneliness of being misunderstood. The world will call you distant, but you have simply traveled further in. Imagine an ancient lighthouse standing solitary on a storm-battered cliff, its beam cutting through the darkness while the village below sleeps undisturbed. This lighthouse doesn't join the village festivals or participate in local gossip, not out of arrogance, but because it was built for a different purpose. The villagers might occasionally wonder why it remains apart, never considering that its isolation is what allows it to see further, to warn ships of dangers invisible from shore. This is the thinker's predicament in symbolic form. Their separation isn't rejection, but the necessary condition for their vision. Schopenhauer himself employed the powerful metaphor of the porcupine dilemma to illustrate the intelligent person's relationship with society. On a cold winter's night, porcupines huddle together for warmth, only to discover their quills injure each other when they get too close. The intelligent mind experiences this paradox with particular intensity, craving the warmth of human connection while painfully aware of the psychological quills of superficiality, compromise and misunderstanding that come with proximity. Unlike most creatures who learn to endure the pricks for the sake of warmth, the thinker often chooses to endure the cold for the sake of authenticity. There exists an even more profound allegory in the ancient myth of the cave, where prisoners mistake shadows on the wall for reality. The intelligent are those who have turned away from the shadows, not because they despise their fellow prisoners, but because they can no longer pretend the shadows are real. Yet here lies the cruel irony. When they return to describe the world beyond the cave, their words sound like madness to those still enchanted by the dance of shadows. This explains why so many profound thinkers throughout history were ridiculed in their time. Their crime wasn't being wrong, but seen too clearly. A final symbolic image emerges from nature itself. Consider the old-growth forest where the tallest trees appear isolated at their canopy level, no longer touching neighboring branches. Below, the younger trees grow close together in competitive clusters. The mature trees aren't antisocial. They've simply reached a height where different rules apply. Their roots remain interconnected underground, just as the thinker maintains connection with humanity at a deeper, less visible level. What appears as isolation is actually a different mode of existence, one that becomes necessary when a certain threshold of understanding is crossed. The greatest challenge for the intelligent mind is not in understanding these truths, but in living them, navigating a world that remains stubbornly committed to its illusions while preserving one's own clarity. This is not a call to complete withdrawal, but to conscious engagement, a way of moving through society without being consumed by it. Thinker must become like a deep-sea diver, able to descend into the abyss of solitude for truth and resurface to interact with the world when necessary, carrying back treasures from the depths without expecting others to understand where they were found. In practical terms, this means cultivating what might be called selective sociability, the art of discerning which connections merit energy and which are mere rituals of conformity. The intelligent often find that their social needs are not absent but refined. They crave fewer interactions, but of higher quality. A single conversation that grapples with fundamental questions can sustain them more than months of trivial exchange. The key is not to reject all human contact, but to become ruthless in curating it. To seek out those rare individuals who speak in truths rather than platitudes, who prefer silence to pretense, and who understand that the deepest bonds are often wordless. The workplace presents a particular challenge, as modern professional environments are often designed around forced socialization and performative enthusiasm. Here, the thinker must develop what Schopenhauer might have recognized as philosophical camouflage, the ability to participate just enough to avoid alienation while reserving the core of one's attention for more meaningful pursuits. This is not hypocrisy but survival, a way to maintain access to the resources necessary for intellectual independence while minimizing the psychic cost of unnecessary engagement. The intelligent worker learns to treat mandatory social functions as anthropological exercises, observing human behavior with detached curiosity rather than resentful obligation. For families and friendships, the implications are more delicate. The thinker cannot expect loved ones to share their perspective, nor should they weaponize their insights as evidence of superiority. The art lies in finding balance, honoring the genuine care beneath conventional expressions while gently redirecting interactions toward more substantive ground. A parent might nurture a child's curiosity rather than just their sociability. A friend might propose shared intellectual adventures alongside casual gatherings. The goal is not to convert others to solitude, but to create pockets of authenticity within conventional relationships. The real-world consequence of embracing this perspective is liberation from the exhausting pursuit of validation, from the fear of missing out, from the tyranny of social metrics that measure popularity rather than depth. But it is also a call to responsibility. Those who see through society's illusions have an obligation not to despair, but to create, to channel their clarity into work that enriches the world, even if the world never fully understands its source. The thinker's withdrawal is only justified if it leads to something greater. Art, innovation, philosophy, or simply a life lived with unflinching awareness. And so we arrive at the transformational invitation at the heart of Schopenhauer's insight. The choice to stop apologizing for seeing differently. This is not about rejecting humanity, but about engaging with it on terms that honor the truth of your own mind. The world will continue its dance of shadows, but you are under no obligation to pretend they are real. Your solitude, when chosen consciously, becomes not a prison but a workshop, a place where the raw materials of experience are forged into meaning. The final challenge is to embrace this role without bitterness, to contribute to a society you understand too well to idolize, and to find, in the depths of your own mind, the connections that superficial sociality could never provide. This concludes our exploration. May your path forward be guided not by the light of common opinion, but by the deeper illumination of your own examined thought.